Good morning. This is John Hoyt. Just wanted to do a little tutorial for security folks on Zeek or formerly Bro, as an intrusion detection tool. So this video is really geared toward folks that are looking to get into information security, either working or looking to work as an analyst, maybe in a SOC. But Zeek Bro is definitely a tool that I would recommend everybody to look into if you're interested in security. And it's a great tool. My description of it is kind of the network flight recorder. The black box, if you will, of the network traffic. Something that you can use that gives you kind of who talked to what protocols, what types, things like that. And you go back to if you're investigating an incident, or if you're wanting to use it to look for suspicious behavior. And this site, try.bros, is a great starter site to just play around without having to go through all the steps of installing Bro, getting it up and running, all those kind of things, which can just slow you down a little bit and give you a taste for playing with Zeek. And you'll hear me go back and forth between Bro and Zeek because they changed the name, and for a long time I've called it Bro. So Zeek I'm still getting used to the name Zeek, even though it's been a while since they've changed it, maybe at least a year. So try.bro.org. There's a couple different parts to it. There's one where they give you all these cool examples of their language. They really have kind of their own language that Bro uses, and it's a mixture of different languages. Some of it's C-like, some of it's like JavaScript-like. It's unique, it's different. But you don't have to jump into all the different language types. It's fun to play around and to use the examples here to get an idea of just changing things. Change print hello world to print whatever, right? And then you run it and see what happens. Oh, look, here's what the output is. So it's good that it's basically a good way to just play with the language. But really the main thing that I wanted to show was how you can use it to play around with PCAPs or with traffic that you've captured, or that they have example captured traffic for you. And that's really the cool part about it. So if you just choose something like exercise traffic, or choose a file of your own, if you wanted to just do a PCAP locally, then you can do that, and that's actually a better way to do it. But to start with, just running this exercise traffic and looking at the different logs. This is what the cool thing about Bro Zeek does, is it will help you look for ways basically to parse all these logs in a way that you can read them easier. You can interpret what the logs are. You can do some analysis. It's not a full Wireshark type PCAP analysis. It's more like it's not just metadata though. It's not like flow logs. It's more like a deeper level of flow. It gives you that metadata, but it inspects the packet further to look into it a little bit more. So think about it as when you see all these different log types, if it sees a packet and it sees a specific type of traffic in that packet, then it will generate an event to match it. So if if IP 1.104 is talking to this 65, 54, 95, 64, right? If it sees those two talking and it sees what looks like HTTP traffic, it will analyze that traffic and spit out kind of the details of what it found, right? If it didn't see HTTP traffic, you would have zero, and you wouldn't even have an HTTP log. So wherever you see a log type, that's where it found potential HTTP traffic. So I'm trying to see where we can see it easier. Yeah, there we go. So the con log, I'll just go through some of these just to kind of just give you an intro into some of these log types. Basically, you've got all these fields, and they do have a specific kind of naming format for the fields. But go to their docs.zeek.org and check out the types of logs, and it gives you a lot better detail than I will here of what the logs are, what they mean, why they're there, what the details of the fields are, things like that. So definitely look at the documentation. But a con log is kind of like a flow, if you're familiar with a flow log, a flow record, IPFix record. It will tell you kind of, who talked to who, how long, what protocol, what service, how much data was transferred, the connection state, was it a legit connection, things like that. So, like in this example, you've got your timestamp, which of course everything, timestamps being so critical for everything. Your unique ID. So this one here is really useful because as you whatever log you find. So there's always a con log if there was a conversation happening. But if I search for the same unique ID for all logs, then you should find that same identifier. It's kind of like the key field in a database, basically. I'm trying to see if there's a good example here. So say for example this one, this unique ID. I should also find this corresponding ID in the HTTP record, right? So you've got originating ID.orig host, orig so the originating host, who was the talker, right? What port did they originate from? The responding host, who did they talk to? The destination, and what port did they respond from? What protocol? UDP, TCP, service. If it was able to identify the service. How long they talk, originating bytes, sent, responding bytes, the connection state, and I don't remember what the local origin, local response is here, but I would go back to the documentation to look at those. So it's just a cool little breakdown of a text type document. It really creates a log file, a flat file that you could go and search through. So say you had some suspicious activity from any of these IPs, like maybe 68, 216, 79, 113, right? Well, this would land in a log file. You can just go grep that log file for any connection events for that IP address, right? You just cat the file, cat con.log. This would be, if you weren't doing this in try.bro, you were doing this on a system that you were running bro. And then you grep for whatever IP you're looking for, right? And, let's look at some of these others. So DHCP, right? This is just what you'd expect from a DHCP log. It's all DHCP traffic. DNS, where it parses out and tries to give you what the query was, right? What the domain it was looking for, which can be really useful. Marshall.net. Files log, so it will try to, if it sees a file being transferred, it will take that file and try to interpret the file and the type of file, right? And how it found the file. It will, a lot of times, if it's not encrypted traffic, it will give you the hash of the file. So if, so you can see here. So if, say for example, you knew you had some indicators of a bad hash, well, you could go through files.log and grep for that hash, the MD5 or SHA-1, and see if you've seen anybody transfer that file to or from your network, right? So very useful. You can tell the type of file, DOS exec, is it a DOS executable, which is typically an exe file, right? And it also has a unique file ID. It's kind of like the connection ID, or the UID, sorry. So this is the corresponding UID. So if you went to the con logs, you could find the corresponding con event with this UID for this file transfer. I thought it also told you a name of the file, but I don't see. Yeah, file name. For some reason, this one file name is blank, but like I said, you really would gear toward the hash if you had it. And you can also use this for like malware checks. Like if you had a malware intel source that said, hey, these files are known bad, let me know if you see them traverse, and somebody downloads these files to my network, then this is something you would use to help you with that. HTTP log, very useful. You can see, a good example would be using this in a phishing scenario where somebody got phished and it wasn't encrypted. It was an HTTP site. You could see a source address, a to address, what the URL was, what the host was, which in this case it didn't have a host name for this specific example, but say it was like, your site misspelled.com, right? Because somebody was trying to spoof your site and phish people. That's where you would see the host here. What the method was. Did they post something? So sometimes, a lot of times, when you're looking through an investigation for a phishing incident, you want to know, did somebody actually submit credentials? So if you found a post method to this site from one of your IP addresses, that's where you would be worried. You'd be concerned. You'd want to find out who owned that IP address at the time and follow up with them to remediate, right? User agents, very useful. You can go through and look and find all kinds of interesting hosts and browser types based off of the user agent field. You can even find old versions of Windows based off of the user agent field. Very, very useful. And file IDs, if there were files associated. And a file doesn't mean necessarily a DOS executable or an executable file. It just could be an HTTP type file. Let's see here. Yeah, so here's a good example of with the host name, avg.com, user agent. And one of the things you'll see a lot of times with user agents is somebody's, like, say they're trying to do some brute forcing or some enumeration on your domain or on one of your websites. The user agent can be an indicator of something weird or unusual, right? It could be a Python type user agent. It could be something that gives you an idea that's like it's a software or a bot that's being used against you, and you may want to block by user agent. There could be something where you're like, hey, if I see this weird user agent, here's like a typical user agent for a browser. But if I see a weird user agent, I might want to alert on that or potentially even block on that. Okay. Certificates, known certificates. If you have that information, it gives you a breakdown of the certificate. And there's a lot of stuff you can dig into looking for weird certificates or interesting certificates. Known host is good. It's like, hey, here's everybody we saw for this given time frame that we did a packet capture. Here's the IP addresses we saw. So maybe quickly you would want to go to known host and see if maybe you had a bad IP you were looking at. Go grep through known host first to see, because it's a lot smaller than a con log, to see if anybody talked to that host, right? It's just, hey, we saw this IP talking, period. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Services is really good. So if you want to know, and maybe you didn't know that a certain service was hosted by your network, right? And these are everything. So this is not just what you hosted, but it's what somebody connected to. But you could grep through this and filter based off of your IP range, and just look at all the services. And maybe there's Telnet open, or maybe there's some other weird FTP site open. You just never know what you'll find in known services, and it can be very useful to parse that, to just see, oh wow, I didn't know this was even open. Somebody's talking to it, right? And then you just go digging. Okay, I found this host was hosting this service, DNS. Let me go dig into this host a little bit more, and you'd search all the other log files for connections to 53. Maybe you'd search for 53 as well. And I'll do another video follow up on like how you might do this from the command line. Notice the log is very good. It's like you're alerting. So Bro is not necessarily like a snort or a suricata. It's more that it does notice. It does do notice events, and we use it for notice events all the time. But it's not like a signature based so much. It's more behavioral or suspicious based. So this is where you get into the Bro language. You can start building out your own notice events. And these are all pretty basic ones in this packet, for example. But, you could do things like, one of the things it's a typical thing you'd see a notice alert is like a brute force to SSH. Somebody brute forcing SSH. And it will do that based off of scripts that are running, and it sees multiple connections from one source to one destination very rapidly, right? Quicker than a normal person would do a connection. So, that's where Bro can write an alert, a notice action that says, hey, this is this example, and actually, I think there is an SSH event. Let's go look at it. See if there's a notice event. Yeah, here we go. So, this host, well, for some reason it doesn't have originating and destination, but this is the event, password guessing. This host appears to be guessing passwords seen in 30 connections. So typical brute force behavior. It's rapid. They're doing it to multiple systems. It just looks suspicious. So this is where, you could have something to follow up on this. Could be a block, could be a shun, whatever. But that's something that Bro is good at helping determine or to alert on. You can write your own notice alert for anything. You can get a little bit more signature like snort and suricata, but that's not really its purpose. You could tie this with something like snort and suricata to help combine the two. It's better, and that's why Security Onion, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it runs both. It runs Bro, Zeek, and it runs whatever you choose, snort or suricata. NTP, network time protocol, just another part. It saw that, so it broke it down. SMTP, mail traffic, software. This is another good one where you could find potentially old software being used on your network. Like maybe you're looking for a specific type of could be Apache, right? And this is external, but say this was internal, and you're looking for a specific version that is vulnerable. Well, you could go to the software log and look for indicators of your systems running that version, right? Very useful. SSL, a breakdown of, the ciphers that it saw used. It's so it's encrypted traffic, and so example might be the phishing site maybe it's SSL, right? It's HTTPS, and you can't do a full breakdown, because it's encrypted. But you could still get some ideas if you knew an IP address that you could still see that one of your hosts talked to that IP address. You can't see all the details if they submitted things like that, but you may have enough information here to indicate like, hey, well, at least this person visited this site, and I need to follow up with them to find out more. Did they submit anything? Stats, I'm not super familiar with. I think it's kind of more metadata about the Bro events. Weird log it's like not RFC compliant traffic. We saw things that are not normal for RFC, type traffic. It'll just spit to weird log. And X509, more certificate based information. So, like I said, check out Try.Bro. Just best thing to do is like actually do a PCAP on your own system, dump it up to here, run it, and just see what comes back. See, look at what's going on your own system. I would do this more in a lab or at home versus at work, because you are, dumping PCAP, which could have something sensitive up to a third party, right? Which these people are trustworthy, but just beware. And then come back from here to the different log types and dig in a little bit more detail on their documentation to say, oh, okay, let me understand the UID, and going through timestamps and monitoring traffic, and just go through the data, go through the logs, and having this example with you to kind of go through and say, okay, what does this mean? What does this field mean? A lot of it's just getting familiar with the field types and what they mean. So that's it. I hope this was helpful for folks that are interested in this kind of analysis and security analysis. Very, very good tool. I'd recommend anybody that's doing intrusion detection, security, offense or defense, to understand a tool like Zeek. Is very popular. It may be running under the covers for tools that maybe have another name, but under the covers it's actually running Bro/Zeek. And a lot of places are using it. So thanks. I hope this is good, and have a good week.